Hi, welcome to our Tip of the Tongue business series. Today I'm talking everything HR with Emily Jacks and Jessie Warren from HR Gurus. Emily, I know when you started HR Gurus, it was to unpack the complicated message that people had around HR and make it simplify it for people, talk about what HR is and what it does that actually benefits and impacts business. And I know people equals profits is something I always remember from talking to you. I think it's a really important time right now that people are getting the best advice for how to take care of their people, not just with on the day-to-day running of things, but with so much information coming to us from government, federal and state. A lot of people are getting conflicting information, and I think it's really important that we take the time to unpack that information for people. So thank you so much for being with us today. This is Emily and Jessie. They run HR Gurus. We're really glad that they're one of our collaborative partners because they talk sense, they make it understandable, and that's what we love about giving information to our business community. I would like to just first mention that this information is for educational purposes. It's really important that you get advice before you make decisions. This isn't legal advice, this is impactful information to help you make the choices moving forward. And it's only current as of today, and every business has a personal situation that they will need advice on. So it's important that you get in touch with HR Gurus before you make major decisions for your business moving forward. So ladies, thank you so much for being with me today. One of the things that I know you want to cover is looking at understanding the current changes to the Fair Work Act, particularly around the JobKeeper scheme that so many people have questions over. One of the other big things is the stand down versus shut down. I think that's one that's really confusing people about the difference between the two. And whether or not reducing employee hours is actually allowable for your business right now and what that could mean long term. And when you need to pay your people and what types of leave are available. And again, these I know are changing daily, so it'd be great to get an understanding of what's going on right now. And lastly, some really hot tips on how to keep your team engaged when everybody's feeling the difficulty of not being able to connect face to face. So let's get started. This is great. Tell me a little bit about what you're finding with the current situation.
Sure. So at the moment we have a lot of businesses that are very confused about lots of different things because there's been changes to the Fair Work Act, changes to multiple awards, and the government is using terms interchangeably, which is creating even more confusion. So it's a pretty difficult time to be a business owner. Many employers are worried about whether they're going to qualify for the JobKeeper scheme, because the detail of that, even though the legislation has been passed, is quite vague, and everyone's kind of waiting on tender hooks and making a lot of assumptions that they are going to be eligible, which is a bit of a danger zone. So we're doing a lot of advice for clients who are in multiple different situations, and every different business has a different kind of setting and different variables that they need to consider. We're struggling to keep abreast of everything. We're, reading voraciously every single day, but the advice is changing every day. And because a lot of this stuff is unprecedented and therefore untested, we don't really know what's going to happen if people make disputes. So it's pretty full on, and hopefully today we can give some businesses some kind of simple, good information that they can take away. But as we said, it's really important that people think about their specific personalised situation before they do anything.
Yeah, so important that we remember that we're all individuals in this, and people handle change very differently. So it's important that we cover that off for people. Very important. Thank you, Emily. So can you give me some idea of what the difference is between stand down and shut down, please?
Yeah, I can talk to that a little bit. So there's been a lot of talk. You can hear the Prime Minister talking about standing down your employees, and if you stand down your employees, then they'll be entitled to JobKeeper if you're entitled to JobKeeper. And a lot of businesses who have had an economic downturn have started to stand down their employees. What a stand down means, and a stand down is very specific under the Fair Work Act, is that you're standing down your employees lawfully, which means that they're not being paid, but they're stood down. So they're not working, they're still an employee, but they're not working. So you might have seen that Qantas stood down a whole lot of their workforce. So they're still employees, but they're stood down in the interim. Now, the Fair Work Act is very, very specific about the times when you can stand down your employees, and there's 3 reasons that you're able to do that, and all of those 3 reasons have to be in effect, and that is there's a stoppage of work and the employees cannot be usefully employed, so they're not able to go and do scanning or some kind of admin work if they're usually doing something else. And the cause of the stoppage is one that's outside of the employer's control. So Fair Work have looked at this in relation to COVID-19, and they have come out specifically and said that an economic downturn is not one of those reasons. So an economic downturn because of COVID-19 would not be considered a stoppage of work. However, there's been 2 categories, I guess, that we call into stage 1 and stage 2 categories of employers. So that is, say, your gyms and your swimming pools, and those businesses that the government have specifically said need to shut down. Those can lawfully stand down their employees because it's outside of the employer's control. However, if you've got a business downturn because of the COVID-19, you're choosing to shut down your business, and therefore it's not lawful to stand down your employees. The stage 2 category is if one of your suppliers, so let's say your main client is a cinema, and that's where you get most of your income from, then you're able to still stand down your employees because you then have no income because your main source of income has been shut down as well by the government.
Jessie, thank you. That was really comprehensive. So when and how can I reduce my employees' hours?
Well, there has been some recent developments around reducing employee hours. However, one is in relation to JobKeeper, which we will cover a little bit later in the presentation. So we're going to talk about what the situation is at the moment if you haven't yet qualified for JobKeeper. And as I understand it, no employers know for sure if they have qualified. So all the awards, enterprise agreements and the Fair Work Act have very specific clauses around the obligation to consult when there's a major workplace change, and that would be in effect in reducing employees' hours. So you can't unilaterally tell your employees that you're reducing all of their hours because of a business downturn. You have to get agreement, and that consultation is there to kind of facilitate that agreement, and the legal risk to employers in reducing their employees' hours is going to be much lower if they have that agreement and consultation piece. 3 awards have been recently amended in the last couple of weeks to include the ability to reduce employee hours, and that's the Clerks and Private Sector Award, the Hospitality Industry Award and the Restaurant Industry Award. However, you still have that obligation to consult, provide a little bit of notice and provide that instruction in writing. If you don't get the employee's agreement, you could risk being in breach of contract, which would be quite expensive. So the employee does need to agree to the reduction in hours if you're not covered by one of those 3 awards.
Brilliant, thank you so much. I think one of the biggest questions people are asking is there an opportunity to avail leave options with people to actually allow them to still maintain part of the company, but take some unpaid leave at the moment, and particularly if there's any that have actually been introduced as part of this challenging situation. Do you have any thoughts on that, please?
So there has been the introduction of pandemic leave. That's unpaid leave, and that's for 2 weeks. So that's in the situations where an employee needs to self-isolate, that they've been, in contact with someone with COVID-19, and they do need to self-isolate. The 2 weeks of pandemic leave have been put into 100 different awards, so it covers most industries. And then if we're talking about annual leave, those 100 awards have also been changed that you're able to come to an agreement with employees that they can take their annual leave at half pay, so they're not without any pay. In certain states, you're able to help the employees access long service leave, but that changes state by state. It's only when employees actually get sick, so they get diagnosed with COVID-19, that they're able to access their personal leave. So, if they're self-isolating and they're not sick because somebody they know or have been in contact with has COVID-19, that's not a reason to take personal leave. So that's really important. And then also unexpected emergencies. So say if one of your employees has their children at childcare and the childcare centre closes all of a sudden, and then they have to take time off, they can take carers leave in order to look after their children because it's an unexpected emergency. So carers leave is available as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I guess we've mentioned before that a lot of things have changed now within the Fair Work Act to try and cope with the changes and the challenges that we're facing. Are there any particular new ones that we need to know that relate to the JobKeeper scheme?
Yeah, absolutely. So once an employee qualifies for JobKeeper, there's been some changes in terms of being able to stand down employees and reduce hours and give directions to employees. However, it's really important to note that that's only for employers that have qualified for JobKeeper, that they're able to enact these changes. So the major changes are that they can make temporary and partial stand downs if the employees cannot be usefully employed somewhere else. And that they can temporarily change the usual duties and location of work. So as long as it's safe and it's within the employee's skill set, they're able to still use them for different work. And the employers can agree on altering days and the time of work as well.
So, we've had some clients that have had to make some changes to their employee duties as a result of COVID-19. One of our clients has a pub and they cannot operate the pub anymore, so they're doing takeaway meals, and they've set up their bottle shop as kind of a grocery store. So instead of just being able to buy alcohol, customers can now get access to some of their suppliers who are selling fruit and veg, meat, and they're doing takeaway family meals. So that's a really great example of pivoting and just changing it up so that they can employ as many people as possible and keep their business going. There's other examples of cafes who've had to change their wait staff's duties to become delivery drivers because they're only doing takeaway now. So these are the types of things that we're seeing out there. So it's about thinking outside the box and obviously consulting with your employees. And I think that most people are pretty happy to still have a job and they'll be willing to do whatever it takes. We've got a childcare centre that we do work with. They are looking at asking employees to change up their duties and serve meals, whereas they used to have somebody come in and do that as a casual. And if things get really bad, they've even considered cancelling their cleaning. So So they've got a cleaning contractor and getting their employees to do that work to save money. So these are some of the examples of what companies are doing.
Mm. I love that. It's that innovation, thinking outside the box, accepting that there's a challenge we're all facing, but actually working together to make the best of it for people. I definitely think that's the way to go. I'd love to ask, I know everyone handles changes differently. If you've got any top tips right now about keeping teams engaged, I know obviously communication is going to be a huge one, but any sort of creative ideas about how to keep your teams engaged, build the loyalty as a group. We all know needing to belong is part of something that's very natural to us as human beings. And I think there's a lot of people that must be struggling with feeling cut off from their normal connectivity right now. What do you think, ladies?
Yeah, it's really important to keep touching base with your employees so that they feel connected, and that to give them that certainty, and so that they don't feel isolated and they still feel part of a team. So yeah, it's new to everybody, isn't it? This remote working and, you know, being on Zoom all the time or whatever platform. It's something so new, and we are all feeling kind of alone. So employees definitely need to feel part of a team and that they're collaborating. And there's little ideas we've seen in action that have been working really well. We've seen teams doing Friday night drinks or games. We heard of one team who does a daily dance off at 3 p.m.
That's brilliant.
And at this stage, you can't really overdo it. You need to, the more you do, the better. The more connected people are, the better. So really, like, you know, even have a morning tea once a week, you know, where everyone brings their favourite cookies or something, you know, or you can have a crazy hat day, but just to make people feel connected. So important right now.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for a lot of people, working from home is a difficult situation to be in, particularly if you've got kids like we do, and the whole homeschooling thing. So I think employers need to be really flexible and understanding, because this is uncharted territory and we're all kind of doing the best that we can. In terms of what employees need right now, they need certainty, because when people have no certainty, that's when they get into the fight or flight mode. And if you look at it from a neuroscience perspective, if people aren't being communicated with about what your company is doing in regards to this uncharted territory, they're going to feel unsafe, and that's going to make them be in a very away state, and that's not really what you want. And the other thing is that people are going to remember how you treat them during this crisis. So what you do and don't do is going to be imprinted on people's minds. We've seen a lot of companies and business owners who go into the flight mode themselves and who are freaking out and making a lot of rash decisions, and, you know, saving themselves. And, you know, I heard of a hairdresser who had a hairdressing salon. This isn't one of my clients, I just saw some story on Facebook. Just to be clear, we do have some hairdressers. So they had a small hairdressing salon, and they obviously saw a reduction in clients. So they just let all of their staff go, and they're working 12-hour days, and they were kind of bragging about it. And I just think that that's a really awful situation. A lot of business owners could, you know, get rid of all of their staff and make a lot of money in these times. And what are they going to do at the end of this? And what does that really say about them, not just to their employees, but to their clients? So I think it's really important to be kind. We are going to get over this. It's going to end. And the companies that do the right thing, engage with their people and put their people before profits, are the ones who are going to come out much better, and they're going to be more profitable. I mean, you just think about the innovation that is going to occur and the businesses who are going to come up with amazing, awesome ideas. And you think about millennials, I feel like they will all be creating amazing products and services in their bedrooms at home. So who do you want to be like? Would be the question I ask. And I think it's it's important to think about the long term and think about what impact your decisions are going to have in the long term, not just the short term. Obviously, we need to balance keeping profitable and keeping your head above water, but there is a lot of government support out there. What it looks like, nobody's really sure. It's not just the JobKeeper, there are other tax breaks and other financial packages that are on offer, and I would advise every business owner to be working really closely with your accountant and getting all the information and kind of forecasting and planning what you can get and doing contingency plans and having like 3 different scenarios. So not just thinking, like not having fixed thinking and going, okay, well, this is the only scenario that I'm going to plan for. You should be planning for A, B, and C, and that's really smart.
This is going to be temporary as well. So once it's over, it's about the businesses that have the ability to bounce back, and the better you treat people now, the better your ability is going to be to get back into market and get back into shape again. If you've got no team left, well, you're going to be left behind, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with all the sentiments. Seeing very similar things out there. Some strange behaviours that I wouldn't have expected, but for the whole, I think seeing very positive abilities to sort of rock and roll with the changes. So yeah, absolutely crucial advice. Thank you very much, ladies. I would suggest that if you are having...
Sorry to interrupt. Can we just go back because we missed something, and I think it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of the presentation or the webinar, and that was that employers need to be really careful about enacting any of the things that we've talked about, because each business is different. Each business is covered by sometimes 3 or 4 awards, and you need to consider what your contracts of employment say, and you also need to consider if you're covered by an enterprise agreement. So you can't just go, okay, well, the Fair Work Act's change, I'm going to start implementing all of these changes. You need to make sure that you get the correct advice. And the other thing that we forgot to say was that if you have employees that have had their hours reduced through the JobKeeper scheme, they will still be accruing their annual leave and all of their entitlements at their previous rate. And if you were to terminate them or make them redundant, you would need to be doing that in accordance with their previous entitlements. So that's really important to note. And anything that you do, any variation of hours or rosters, you need to put that in writing and get the employees to agree, would be our advice. Is there any other thing that we missed?
Basically just to get buy-in, I think, is the most important thing with all of this. I mean, if you're giving directions is when the employee, it's not an agreement, and that's some of the JobKeeper legislation allows employers to make directions, but we always feel that the safest way is to get agreement, get the buy-in, explain to your team why you're doing what you're doing and get them to agree to it. And the risk of litigation and risk of underpayments and further down the track is reduced so much more when you can, get that buy-in, get that agreement, get an agreement in writing so it's not a direction, and then your legal risk, diminishes significantly.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to remember that, because from what we're seeing, where the employer is doing a really legitimate, honest consultation and being really honest and upfront with their employees and over communicating and letting their employees know what they're thinking about doing, most employees are very grateful and very responsive, and they understand the situation, and they're more than happy to agree. And most people are really grateful to keep their jobs. So the way that we've been framing it with our clients is we want everybody to have a reduction in hours so that everybody can keep their jobs, because the alternative is if everybody doesn't agree to this, we're going to have to start making people redundant and laying people off. So that's the sentiment, I think, that is going to get all of this across the line with your employees.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thank you so much, ladies. I think it is a really complex topic. I think, as you say, it's going to continue to get complex. Thank you for unpacking it. Thank you for making it understandable. And I think if you're out there and you're having trouble with your understanding the best way to take care of you and your people right now, then this is the contact information you need. You need to contact Emily and Jessie and make sure that your individual situation is understood so that you make the right decisions now that are not going to give you a lasting impact into the future. So thank you so much for talking with me today, ladies. It's been an absolute delight. I'm sure we'll speak again because I'm sure there'll be more updates soon. But in the meantime, everybody out there, stay safe, stay well, and most importantly, stay informed. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.